I'm so honoured to have two fabulous humans who just happen to be talented parliamentarians here with me tonight. Senators Jacinta Nampijinpa-Price and Senator Claire Chandler. First up, Jacinta, Alice Springs is your hometown, so what's going on there must be breaking your heart. But you also warned that this was coming. What has to happen to give hope and safety to this community you love?
Look, what needs to happen is Anthony Albanese needs to actually listen to those voices that that have been warning, certainly the Minister for Indigenous Australians and the Labor government, the Territory Labor government, as well as the federal government for months now, about the Stronger Futures legislation lapsing, the availability of alcohol in what once were restricted areas, the fact that they've abolished the cashless debit card. They should have been listening to all of those voices warning them not to do what they've gone ahead and done, but instead they've completely ignored all of those voices. And one of them, of course, who warned of these possibilities and also spoke out about the fact that it was disastrous to allow alcohol into these communities was his very own Member of Parliament, Marion Scrimgeour, an Aboriginal woman from the Northern Territory. What the government should be doing is reinstating those alcohol bans, the Stronger Futures legislation. They should be doing that. They should be doing things like ensuring that schools like Yiperinya School, that I have fought for, are being funded to be able to build the accommodation needed to provide a safe haven with an education focus for the kids who belong to the town camps who are on those streets at night. The Mayor of Alice Springs should be fighting to reinstate the Elder Foot Patrol that was working previously when I was on council, that was dealing directly with those kids on our streets, engaging with the families of those children to ensure that they weren't allowed back on the streets and informing them of their behaviours and what they're up to. There's a number of things that can be done and can be done immediately that this government is simply choosing not to do. And I'm hoping, because my draft bill, which I want to introduce to Parliament when we come back for sittings, is about reinstating those bans again, but also providing the opportunity for communities to, if they want to opt out of those bans, then they have to create alcohol management plans, effective alcohol management plans for their communities before alcohol can go anywhere near those communities. And it was the responsibility of the Territory Government to have done that previously, but this bill would make that a requirement. And then, eventually it would be up to the Minister to identify which communities have successfully created those mechanisms to say, righto, you can now have some form of alcohol availability within your community, which is also supported with education, rehabilitation and those sorts of things.
But it'd be such a good start, wouldn't it?
Rocket science. It's just not rocket science.
Claire, we've never had more consultation bodies for Aboriginal people than we do right now. Why is there this push for an Indigenous voice to Parliament when we already have a swathe of consultation bodies, and yet consultation doesn't seem to be getting the results on the ground? What really is needed seems to be action.
Well, I think that's a really fair question, Amanda, and Jacinta really hit the nail on the head in talking about the practical solutions that are required in these communities to put an end to the horrible violence that we're seeing there. And it is a real question. Why do we need another advisory body in Canberra to make these decisions? And if we are going to do something drastic like changing our constitution, then we need to be very certain of what that body might look like, what it might be able to do in practical terms, who will be able to be a member of that body. And all of these questions are ones that the Albanese government so far has completely refused to engage with. Changing the constitution, like you said in your opening remarks, is a really serious business. And I think it's an insult to Australians that they aren't being provided with the information that they need to be able to make that decision.
You're quite right, Claire. And Jacinta, if I can ask you this, in circumstances where Albanese won't provide the detail that's needed to understand what he's got in mind, what does the Victorian example have to tell us about what to expect?
Look, it's absolutely and utterly alarming that this is a prime example of the direction in which the voice will go. You've got 30,000 people who are supposed to be able to have the opportunity to vote, and this is an elected model. Imagine what it'd be like if it wasn't an elected model, and it was a model where the Labor government choose and appoint who they want in their positions. We know that they'll support, everything that Labor is attempting to do. But if you go back to the Victorian model, $65 million of taxpayer funds specifically for Indigenous Victorians only. That sounds like, to me, that sounds a little bit like favouritism and racism. And now they're demanding, now they're negotiating a treaty, and within that, they're actually they're planning to demand for complete oversight of the Victorian government and, of course, the public service, but all while being funded by all of the taxpayers of Victoria. And I remember when they were proposing this assembly that it would be driven by culture. Now, what scares me about that is that who defines what this culture is, given that really traditional culture hasn't been practiced in Victoria for quite some time now, and therefore they can make it up on the spot. I'm guessing. So it's fraught with danger. If Australians want an example of what the voice model might look like, there's one right there in Victoria, and they're not stopping. Nothing's off the table for this particular group in terms of their treaty negotiations and what they're expecting for the rest of Victoria to do to support them simply on the basis of the fact that they can claim Indigenous heritage.